Thank you for joining us here today on Hill Country Happenings News Minutes. It's been an exciting day out here today at the Home and Garden show, and we have got a lot of highlights to show you, and soon we will have a whole show built around the Home and Garden show, so we hope you'll stay tuned for that. We visited Hollis Springs with their plantation tour and the Behind the Big House tour. We've got several different things involved today. And in Ed's rain gauge this week, we had some rain. Out in the Liberty area, we got 1.88 inches of rain. That's a pretty good amount. Now this weekend we also had some rain, but next week it looks like it's going to be a regular spring showers week. There's chances of rain nearly every day, but there'll be some sunshine too. Remember, April showers bring May flowers. Now we hope you'll stay tuned for the rest of the show today, and like I said, it is jam-packed. We hope you enjoy the show, and we hope you have a wonderful week.
I'm Jaden Turner.
Okay. Tell me who you're with.
We're with Girl State. Girl State is a program that teaches us about how our government works and how to become a better leader. It's in Hattiesburg at Southern Miss.
And we stay a week and we just learn so much, and it's a really great opportunity.
Okay. So what are y'all doing here today?
We're helping like a fundraiser. We're helping like make hot dogs, give out drinks, coffee, anything we can to make money.
Okay. And how many girls are going?
10.
I think it's just going to be wonderful, and we'll have a great time, and I'm really honored to have this opportunity to go.
Okay. What is the one thing that you've learned that stands out in your mind?
Well, one thing I've learned is that I'm going to have to really get out of my comfort zone to do this. So come out and support Girl State.
Tell me how you cut this wood, where the wood came from.
Oh, it came from old gym floor at Blue Mountain College.
How long does it take you to make a piece?
I don't know. There's 6 different stages to it, and I keep some in all stages at all times.
Okay.
That way I don't get bored doing one thing and then switch and do something else. So I would say it'll take a week, glue time from start to finish.
What's the name of the booth? Do y'all have a name for the company?
Backroads Creations.
Backroads Creations. Okay. So tell me a little bit about your.
We're with Decker Yard. We're out of Myrtle, Mississippi.
What's your name?
Is Jared. I'm with Decker Yard. We're out there in Myrtle. Our big thing is fountains and the frostproof pottery, and then also our tropical plants and stuff like that. But my big thing is the water feature, which I'm waiting on my pump to get going.
How long have y'all been at Myrtle?
Myrtle, I think it's about 3 years now. I've been out there for 2. I have hibiscus, Japanese maples, angel trumpets, a wide selection of hanging baskets, and a bunch of different pots out here. Got a little bit of everything. Hello, how are you?
My name is Elise Richmond.
Who are you with?
I am with We Are Baz.
Tell me about it.
Well, We Are Baz is a premier company that remodels bathrooms and does kitchen remodels also. So we're here to get people that are looking to remodel both of those rooms in their home.
And y'all are out of Pontotoc.
Well, I'm located in Pontotoc. The company distributor is located in Jackson, Tennessee, and the factory is in Libertyville, Illinois.
Cool.
Yes.
Thank you.
Well, you're welcome.
Hello, Hill Country.
Tell us what you're doing today.
Well, we're just trying to advertise the farmers market that's going to be in the first weekend in June. Well, actually, the first Thursday in June through August, and just want to make people aware of it. Sponsors and our posters and just things that we have to advertise our market.
Yeah. So we're doing jam boxes again this year.
Jam boxes, absolutely. Absolutely.
Tell about jam boxes.
Jam boxes are where they take the first of the pickings from the farmers, and they have orders in advance, and they'll give about 25 pounds of fresh vegetables, and they'll have it ready for you to come pick up at the market or a location like Sugar Reese to pick them up.
How much is it?
I think it's $25. We're also looking to sign up vendors, more vendors.
Yeah.
Vendor sign up sheets for crafts and for food, and trying to get more farmers involved.
Awesome.
There's going to be a side there and inside there, and there's going to be speaking right now.
So tell me your name.
Austin Garrett,
Name of your company.
Magnificent Metals.
Okay. How long have you been doing this?
I've been doing this arts and crafts for about 3 years.
Cool.
This is a CNC plasma cutting.
That's awesome. So tell me about the tree design. What is that?
That's just a tree of life.
Justin Collins,
And you're with?
Wade Incorporated in Pontotoc, Mississippi.
And what do you have here today?
We got the Z730M and the X370 motors.
One of those zero turns.
Yes, well.
Where are y'all located in Pontotoc? Right on 15.
15.
Yeah, I seen you. I seen you.
690 Bankhead is our address. And yeah, we grow. All of this you see right here came from our farm. We grow all of our annuals, perennials, hanging baskets, herbs, vegetable plants. We all grow. We've got a farm where we have 20 greenhouses, and we have 4 garden centers, one of which is here in New Albany at 690 Bankhead Street. And we have one in Tupelo, out on Cliff Gookin Boulevard, beside Room to Room Furniture. We have another one in Fulton, Mississippi, right off the interstate. You can't miss us. We're directly across the highway from Walmart. And we have another one in Amory, Mississippi on Highway 278, just down the hill from Walmart.
So tell me your name.
Johnny Bedwell.
And where are you from?
Jonesboro, Arkansas, with John's Woodshop.
Awesome. Do you have a card?
Yes, I do.
Okay, great. So tell me about the little table you're sitting at.
It's just children's table and chairs. It's something I decided I wanted to build.
Awesome.
And I built it to where I can sit in it.
Burlap and stakes to try to keep them from scorching. You see this little guy had already scorched. We ended up losing it, unfortunately. So we've got me thinking, well, we need to do something about drought. We need to talk about drought. So the next year, our theme was going to be drought-tolerant plants and throughout the garden. And so that's when I started planting these agaves and succulents in the garden that are hardy with representing, again, heat and drought. Well, we had record rainfall that year, and actually the entrance to the station was closed a couple times. It was crazy. You can't predict the weather, as you know. I think y'all probably been affected by the drought much more than we have the last couple of years. But like last year and this year, we've had record rainfall. We've already had like 30 inches this year. It's crazy. But anyway, the show went on even though we had all this rain, and so I built this outdoor kitchen, or kitchen that's outdoors, I guess. That kind of represents a hot place. You think about a kitchen in the 20s and 30s, it would be a hot place to be in the house. So I planted it up with the seedings and succulents. So we got the old Hoosier cabinet, the old kitchen sink that was out of the farmhouse near me, the farm table again out of the farmhouse, and Master Gardener loaned me the stove. And so we planted it up again with the seedings and succulents, very drought-tolerant plants. Had a lot of fun with that. You just take the bottom out of the chair, you line it with chicken wire, and then burlap, and then put your potting soil in there and plant in it. And then the Hoosier cabinet, we just took tin cans, spray painted those to make them more colorful. Of course, you knock a hole in the bottom. You just take a hammer and a nail and peck a hole in the bottom, or a drill bit for drainage. And then the cook stove with the double boiler and the tea kettle and the loaf pan. And then on the stove with the pots and pans. So Master Gardeners helped me collect all this material that we use. Again, you got to be sure to make a hole in the bottom if it doesn't already have one, so it drains properly. And can't tell with the picture, but this is actually a blue sedum to represent water in the sink, and of course then the old mixer. And ironing, another hot task or a warm task, ironing and washing clothes. So again, very fortunate to have Master Gardeners to help me with all these things, bringing in the clothing and loaning me different items for the gardens. And then we moved across the parking lot into the 60s and 70s and even 80s, and with the OT cart. And again, drilling a hole, you can buy a bit at Lowe's that will drill through ceramic or glass, a glass bit or a ceramic bit to get a hole in the bottom of those. And then little muffin tins. I don't know if they still sell them, but Dollar Tree for a while sold these 12-cup muffin tins for $1. And so again, we just took a hammer and a nail and popped a hole in the bottom of each one of those to get drainage, and we planted them up with the different sedums and succulents. And then of course the avocado green cook stove in the garden. I was trying to search for all these fun colors of cook stoves, and at the time I never found a harvest gold. I put this plea out in this one lady said, I've got one, but I'm still using it and you can't have it. And I said, oh, I'll just buy it from you. No, I love my harvest gold. And she still has it to this day. But I found one since then, so we're going to repeat this theme in a few years. But love these fun colors. I don't know if you're an antique shopper, but these odd colors now are going for more than a brand new cook stove. It's crazy. If you find a pink one or a blue one, they're like $2,000 to $3,000 for an old one. But just fun things in the garden. Bunt pan, again, pots and pans all planted up. The Memphis Botanic Garden, the children's garden, a few years back with the old couch and recliner. These are pretty easy to find too. They're pretty much on the side of the road. You can drive around a street or two and you can pick one up and take it home and plant it up if you'd like. So you just cover it with sphagnum moss and again seed them very drought tolerant. The only problem is I can't figure out how you would dispose of the thing when you got through with it, because it would be really heavy after you've been outside and absorbed all the moisture through the years. But a fun object to have in the garden. So again, the children's garden at the Memphis Botanic Garden.
Take you far beyond the stars. Let me be your wings. Let me lift you high above. Everything we're dreaming of will soon be ours. Anything that you desire. Anything at all.
both roses in the landscape, and you're going to see some arrangements of roses and roses in different parts of the seasons. I'm a member of the Master Gardener Group of New Albany, and I also am a Rosarian with the Northeast Mississippi Rose Society. We actually meet in Corona at the Extension Center. And I also am a member of the Memphis Dixie Rose Society, and I also belong to a gardening club up there. But these photos are going to be playing the whole time, but I'm not going to be speaking to those photos. I'm just going to be talking generally. You're going to get a big overview. If you want more specifics, there are books here, and you can get the books and look at those. Also, there'll be time for questions afterwards. There are also door prizes afterwards. And there won't be a lot of time between my talk and fellow Russians' talk. So if you want these handouts, as I said, feel free to come up and get them. Go ahead.
You want to take time to do that now?
Most of them have them.
Did you introduce yourself?
I did.
I'm so sorry. I got tied up. I was just getting back.
We had a dance group too. But let me go on then. Most of
Did
these,
Tracy get introduced?
I introduced myself.
She is the ultimate rose grower and rose winner and fun person. And she comes into
More
every.
formal part of my little presentation. And as I said, afterwards, I'd be happy to answer your questions. I also have some props here that I'm going to show you after I've talked a little bit. We're going to cover, as I said, both the Easy Care roses. Those are the ones that you can go mostly to your box stores to buy. You can get them in actually nurseries as well. But they're the ones that you pretty much can put in the ground, water them the first time, and not do an awful lot after that. If they develop any sort of a problem or they look kind of straggly in the late summer, it's probably because they do need a little water. But most of the time, they're very drought resistant and they are pretty in the landscape. My focus really has been on the hybrids, grandifloras, the polyanthus. I have some antique roses, and most of those take a lot of work. So you can choose one or the other, or you can just look at them and see how pretty they are. There are books here for people who, from the Roses of Mississippi, from the Extension Service. If you never grow a rose, that's a pretty book to look at, because you'll see the history of roses in Mississippi. Let's see. Oh, there's also going to be a picture that pops up in here of Felder Rushing, who's the next speaker. And the reason I put that in there was he spoke in Pontotoc back in November. The Open Gate Garden Club invited him, and actually I provided all of the roses, which was amazing because it was the middle of November. Now they weren't as pretty and as big as they might be, but on the other hand, they had roses. So I took that picture of him because there are some of those roses in the background, and the ladies of the Garden Club arranged them. There was quite a bit more, but I only really got the one arrangement. But keep in mind that that was the middle of November. There's also one of me, and it's kind of comical, but I had a retirement job at a school in Pontotoc, and they always asked me to do the roses for some of the senior activities and also for the retirement parties. Well, I actually retired from my retirement job last May, and I still did the flowers. And there's a picture of me, and I think it's the one that they've used for advertising, with a great big bouquet of flowers in front of me, and that was for the retirement party for the group. Okay, by seasons. I'm going to do this real quickly. Although I'm going to give you the by season that I normally would follow, it's not what I did this year. And the reason for that was I had a hip replacement a couple of weeks ago, and I knew that I had to get everything done before I did that. So instead of following the schedule, I actually did an awful lot in January, and I took my roses. You're going to see some tiny little roses in there that are down here that don't have any leaves on them. That's because that was the only way I figured I could take care of them this year. Because if I had cut them off higher, I would have been not only pruning them, but picking off all the dead leaves. And I knew I couldn't do that, so they're real low. But now they're covered with foliage. I've only lost, I think, one. Usually I replace a few, and when I can't help myself, I buy more and find another place to put them. But after a while, you run out of sun. And you know, for roses, you really need 6 to 8 hours of sun every day. Roses don't like wet feet either. You're going to water them about 2 inches of water a week. You can measure that by putting out a mayonnaise cap or something else like that to tell how much water you've actually put in the ground. You don't want to water roses lightly a lot of times, because what happens is they get very shallow roots. But this is just an overview of what I normally would do in a year, but it also tells you that in many cases you can be pretty flexible.
all the tamales. Anyway, for the next little while, we're just going to talk about gardening because I have written 18 books. I'm a member of the American Horticultural Society, the Royal Horticultural Society. I live in England half the year. I have a little garden in Jackson. I've got a little garden in England, and I just don't do horticulture anymore. I retired from the university. I didn't quit. I didn't get fired. I didn't blow a vein. I actually retired. It was like pulling teeth for them because I was raised by an old lady. And by the way, if you're not from the South, you may not understand. Old lady is not an age or a gender thing. It's a style. You know what I'm saying? Where you do whatever you want to do. My great-grandmother was a charter member of the Garden Club in 1935. And when I was 10 years old, she called me Little Professor. Because, see, I can't catch balls. I don't have that hand-eye coordination. So I just hung around her and all the Garden Club ladies, digging around plants and stuff like that. We're going to talk about some of that. The point I'm trying to make is gardening and horticulture are not opposed to each other, but they're different. It's like a chef versus a home cook. You know, we're going to talk about home cooking tonight, not the chef stuff. Horticulture is crop production. Are you trying to get yard of the month? Or you want to fill your freezer? Or you want to have a perfect lawn? Or you want to get a blue ribbon? Anything where there's a goal in mind. All these little tricks and nuances and shortcuts, efficiency help you. But if you're just knocking around the yard, we don't care if we ever get there or not. Left brain, crop production, right brain, just enjoying what we're doing. And that's kind of what we want to talk about today. I want to start out by mentioning the word garden comes from an old English word, gordos. It means guarded area. Gordos became guarded, became yard. It also became hortos and horticulture and courtyard. A little more upscale, but still that feeling of enclosure. So if you don't feel like you're in a special place in your yard or your community or your state or your country, whatever, if you don't feel like you're in a special place, then it's not a garden. You know, it's just wide open space. What gardeners do is we take this concept called an enclosed area and, let me turn this thing on, and we gussy it up. Any questions? Are y'all awake? Okay, who had too much to eat and you're going to take a nap on me? Okay. And no two of us will do the same. You give us all a little gate, middle of nowhere, a gate in the middle of nowhere, somebody's going to plant something by it, because that's just where we are. And that's what gardeners do. Now, I'm going to be talking about what's called slow gardening, which I'll explain a little bit later. It's not exactly what you might think. I want to mention, though, I've been here at New Albany quite a few times. Jesse studied Faulkner at Ole Miss. He's a writer. And we spent a lot of time kicking around ideas about stuff. But one of the things that particularly enamored me of the way Faulkner wrote, he wrote about stuff of the South. Now, there's a lilac bush. If you go over to the museum, they got a lilac. And we all know lilac. How do lilacs do here? Not too good. But he wrote about them anyway. They got a cute little lilac bush out there. And it's actually looking pretty good for the South. But what they've done at the museum, they've taken all these plants in Faulkner's books and had a little pull quotes about what it is right beside each one. And how he wrote about them, what wistaria. So it's a really cool place. And it's like 3 blocks from here. If it's closed, climb over the fence. What would Faulkner have done? Well, he would have had a drink and thought about it, right? Anyway, we're going to talk about something. I am from the Mississippi Delta. To me, y'all are hillbillies. And I'm from the Delta, a flat area. And I can't talk about anybody, but it's a different culture between Delta and hills. Different culture. That's where I was born and raised. My great-grandmother was a horticulturist. She was a member of the garden clubs. And she grew 350 different kinds of daffodils. 350. Planted them during the Depression when they didn't have enough money to eat, but she spent their money on daffodils. She's one of those. How many of you have 5 or more different kinds of any one type of plant and you know their names? Daylilies, daffodils, hostas, ferns. Any of y'all have plant name tags in your garden? Come on, it's all right. You know your neighbors talk about you. I have a little area in my garden that's got plant labels, little mulched area, nice little plant labels, and nothing planted there. But it looks smart. And isn't that what we're trying to do, is try to look smart? Anyway, of all these 350 different kinds of daffodils, here it is, these decades later. She died back in the 1970s, and almost all of them are gone. But there's 24 still blooming, and I want to know what are the names of those, because those are the ones I want in my yard. I don't care about the one that disappeared, because I'm not horticulture anymore. I'm a gardener. I want to put something in the ground, green side up. and expected to do well for them. So that's my approach. She did tell me that if you wanted to get a blue ribbon, it's not what you know. And Garden Club ladies, I learned a lot from y'all. I studied forward line under Ralph Null at Mississippi State. And I know Spiky, Roundy, Frilly, and Hogarth Curve and all that kind of stuff. But she said if you want to win a blue ribbon, it's not what you know that counts. It's not even what you do or how you do it. It's how well you figure out ahead of time what the judges are looking for. And give them that. If that's the way you want to be, that's what it takes. You got to suck up to other people. And that's all right. Well, what she wrote in her journal in 1914, she wrote in her journal of her mother, all dressed up to go to church. I carry a bouquet of flowers to church. This is back before deodorant, so people carried flowers. And she says she said among the red roses with a delicate blue Tradescantia with the long bright green streams of leaves. Tradescantia, named after John Tradescant from England, one of our early plant explorers. How many of y'all recognize Tradescantia, that blue stuff? What do you call it? Spiderweb. Have you ever tried to kill it? I mean, a Roundup just burns it down, it comes right back up. Well, she didn't care how wild and weedy it was, whether the rose had black spot. She remembered that combination that her mother carried in her hand, that little bouquet. It's what she called the Rumpelstiltskin effect. Remember Rumpelstiltskin? Well, golden garments out of what? Straw. Common straw. Golden garments out of common straw. And isn't that what we want to do in our yard? We want to have golden garments. That's what.
Together. That's right. So, my name is Joe. I'm the creator of the From Slavery to Freedom Cabin tour. That's the wrong tour. That's the wrong place I work. Actually, I'm the creator of the Slave Dwelling Project. I find spaces like this all around the nation, and I ask the owners if I could spend the night in these spaces. Just bring attention to them, because oftentimes when people come to properties like this, the focus is that usually a nice, beautiful big house on the property, and there's nothing wrong with that. There's a story to be told there, but that's not the whole story. The rest of the story is here, in these spaces, because it was these spaces, or these people who lived in these spaces, who were the physical builders of those nice, beautiful big houses. They either cut down the trees that frame those houses, or they made the bricks that are now those houses, or their labor provided the wealth for those houses to be built. Okay, this space was built by Mr. Kraft. It's called the Hugh Kraft House. He was a surveyor. He speculated. You know, when Mississippi was becoming a state, it happened quickly. And because it happened so late and so quickly, a lot of technology was brought along in that process. So you see the way the boards are cut. You can see all that here in this structure. In this space lived approximately 9 people. If you go into the other room, we'll get into some census information. Below, all of us would have been a smokehouse. So imagine this being your living space, and below you, you're smoking meats. So either smell like smoke or meat, or like both, smoked bacon or whatever the case might be. We have evidence that this space was built right around 1841. That house was built around 1851. So this house, this space, was built before that nice, beautiful big house. And this is called the Behind the Big House tour. So this space actually serviced the house that was originally built in front of it. So let's go into this space. You get a good picture? All right. So here's where I'm sleeping tonight, guys. Right here in this space. There's supposed to be others sleeping. There might be some others as bold as you have been. So we'll see. So I've got here some census information. Census. Of course, you guys know what censuses are. The counts were taken. You see the people listed here. You see people enumerated here. You know what's missing? The names. The names was not important. And this is a government document. Now, here's evidence of institutionalized racism right here. because in this 1860 census, people are enumerated. Enumerated because our Constitution, in debating that Constitution in 1788 in Philadelphia, the Southerners wanted to count these folks as one whole. But the Northerners said, no, you can't count them as one whole. You can count them as 3/5. So even counting them as 3/5 still gave the Southerners the advantage, because all they had to do was keep adding more. But of course, the Civil War interrupted that process. So you can see the physical evidence here of the people who lived here and how they were listed on the census. All right, so this building was built primarily to be the kitchen for that big house. That was the hearth. That's where the cooking would take place. You see the outline of what the hearth may have looked like, and you see that it's quite sizable. It is huge. These folks with the means to build such a nice house like that usually entertain people. And when people traveled back then, it was not a kind of an in and out. It was not a day trip. These people traveled, it took them a while to get there, and when they got there, they stayed a while and they entertained. So that means the duties of the enslaved people, the cooks, whoever they may have been, was compounded by that much. So that's why that hearth exists. The architecture of the house dictates that the visitors coming in to see the enslavers would go through that front door and have a nice grand staircase to have access to the upper levels of those houses.
This is the ash wood that comes from the fire. From the wood turns to ash, and this is the ash hopper, and you add rocks and hay, and you add the ash wood, and you keep pouring boiling hot water into the ash hopper, and it turns into this, which you can really burn yourself. You can burn your hand on this. This here is lard. Back in the day, they would use animal fat from a sheep, pig, or cow. You will boil the ash, and then you add the lard to it, and you keep stirring it until you get a thick consistency. Then you mold it, and it turns into the actual lye. This is actually yellow coloring. Urine, animal or human urine, was another ingredient to use to make lye soap. Urine over time turns to ammonia. So either you can use it with or without the urine. This here is a dye, so if you want to dye your clothes. So there were 9 steps to doing laundry for the laundress. It was sorting, batting, boiling, wash, rinse, air dry, iron, mending, and folding. So it was impossible for one laundress to do the laundry. So she had other laundresses and children to help her with the task. So this is a bat, and this was used to bat out all the dirt before you boil the clothes. You will boil the clothes here, and boiling it will lift as much dirt and stains as possible. This is a batting, so you will stir this for at least a good 30-45 minutes. This here is a yoke. The children will help with the duties of the laundress, so the children will go back and forth to the creek, and they'll have this yoke around its neck, and they'll put the pails of buckets on each side. So they will go between 6 or 7 times a day to get fresh water for the laundress. And then here, they will wash here with the washboard, and then they rinse, and then put them here to hang dry. This is an iron. They'll use one iron while it's hot, and they'll have an iron right next to the pot. So once the iron gets cold, they'll get the other iron from the pot and just keep switching back and forth. Rice water was used as starch to get the wrinkles out of the clothes. And in order to keep the irons clean, it will have to be polished every day so it won't rust like this. So this iron would not be used to iron. It has to be clean and not a lot of rust on it. So that was the responsibility of the blacksmith, to make sure that the irons are always polished, so when they iron, it won't look like this and mess up the clothes. And this here's a flutter, so it'll give you pleats, either on skirts or shirts on the tongue, or on the sleeves. You have like those puffy sleeves. You use this as a flutter to give you pleats on here.
I'm Carter, and I'm the president of Preserve Marshall County Holly Springs, Inc., the local preservation nonprofit. And basically we're charged with the advocating for and pursuing the preservation of historical sites. Yeah, come on. Historic sites and structures and historical culture. And the Behind the Big House program is one of our educational outreach programs that seek to basically to advocate for the preservation of a very integral part of this the culture of the antebellum South, which is the giving voice to the long past enslaved people who basically made this much romanticized moonlight magnolias gone with the wind sort of antebellum lifestyle possible. And these are the people who basically toiled endlessly and lived in these humble dwellings behind the big house, out of sight, out of mind. And so we seek to give a voice to these long past enslaved people who had no voice in their history, and largely in traditional tours of historic houses depicting the antebellum South, they're largely silent still, because they're hardly mentioned that they had any part in this, whereas actually the entire economy of the South, which existed on cotton, existed on the shoulders of a huge population of enslaved people who sort of made it happen. And so basically I like to say that if you're going to tell the story of the antebellum South and not include the narrative of the enslaved people, then you're not telling history. You're basically just trivializing things. And to be quite honest, it's a cultural genocide. You're treating it as if these people did not exist. And without them, this much glamorized antebellum moonlight magnolias image, that doesn't exist. And so you can't tell one without the other. And that is what our program seeks to do, is to tell a fuller, more complete, and accurate historical narrative of this region and give these people their rightful place in our history.
Country Network, you're in Holly Springs, Mississippi in April, and the pilgrimage is going on, but this is Behind the Big House. Okay, and what we're going to talk to here today about is at the Burton Plantation, the Burton home here in Holly Springs, is about how bricks were made as for these large homes, these luxurious homes in Holly Springs, and these were the homes of the very wealthy. You have to understand that the homes like Burton Place, Earlywood, Walters Place in Holly Springs, only the wealthy could afford to build these extravagant brick homes because it was very labor intensive. Okay? So we'll talk about how the bricks were made. What's the one thing in Mississippi that you have in the ground? Clay, that red clay, right? And over here we got a bucket of sand, and I'll tell you what we're going to do with these. The clay is in abundance, and what you do is in late October, you get your clay out of the ground, or you go down to the riverbed and you get your clay, you find your vein of clay of the type of bricks that you want, the color that you want, and the labor intensive begins because you have to transport that clay back to your site. The clay sits out above ground all winter long and through the spring. And what happens in the winter is the clay freezes and thaws out. So it oxidizes, gets the oxides out of it, freezes and falls out. It sits out there until late spring after the rainy season. What happens next? It's called the pugging of the clay. And so in a pit at your site, you put your water in your hole where you dug your clay out, or you dug a pit for your clay that's near your clay, and you put your clay in the hole, and the young men are out there pugging. They're stamping the clay. They're making it malleable. This goes on all day. okay, and late into the night. You're doing this because you got to make that clay malleable, and this is a long process, takes weeks. And what happens is the debris rises to the top, all the sticks and the stones, all the stuff you don't need in the clay, it comes out. The next step is the molding process. This is a brick mold. This is a multiple brick mold. These are only examples. Okay, so you see how large this mold is compared to the actual brick. You can see that. That's because we'll get to it in a minute, the shrinkage. So the clay is brought from the pugging pit to the master brick maker. He'll form the brick in the mold, take a piece of wood, scrape it off, and what you'll see when it's scraped off, those serrations is where it was scraped off. That's how I know, one reason I know this is a slave-made brick, because that's where they took the wood across the clay and scraped off the excess clay. Now what has to happen is these have to dry. So all across the yard here, on your left and your right, these bricks, the clay would be stacked, and the children's job would be to come along and rotate these. And you use gravity to get the water out of them. This is the drying process. The drying process takes weeks, okay? Because they're dried out here, they stack them in a herringbone pattern, like that, so the air could get through them, okay? And then they would move them indoors in a barn, underneath a tent, any kind of structure where the rain and the water couldn't get to them, because they were continued to drying. This is still the drying process. It takes weeks. So, and you're making that house behind you, that house could possibly take 150,000 bricks or more. The one over here on your right, the quarters of the enslaved, took this, I calculate about 30,000 bricks. Okay, so it's very labor intensive and you have to dry these bricks out. The next step in the process is the kiln, where the bricks are fired. They're clay, they're not brick yet, they're still clay. So you build your kiln. Your kiln is 6 to 7 feet high, 8 to 10 foot wide, and it has holes in the bottom where you put your wood at. So you got your kiln stacked like this here. Okay, so the air will come through the bricks, and you have to heat that kiln up till it gets up to about 2,000 degrees to make the bricks hard. And you have to be very careful, because you bring the heat up too fast, the bricks won't get hard enough. They'll be brittle and they'll crack when you go to build your house. You don't bring it up at the right temperature, they don't get hard enough. Okay, and then the temperature has to stay at the 2,000 degrees for 4 to 5 days to fire the bricks. This is how you get your color in the bricks. Some of them are closer to the center, they have more burn. Okay, there's the oxides in this one, closer to the fire. This one here was more on the outside. Different bricks go in different parts of the building when you go to build the house. Very labor intensive. Now, the kiln, the brick master had no temperature gauges, no thermostats. All they had was their eyes, their ears, their sense of smell, and their brain. And they had to keep track of everything that was going on by sight, sound, and sense. No gauges. So you had to be able to tell when that temperature was 2,000 degrees by looking. You had to be able to tell that the temperature was coming down at the correct rate, so that those bricks wouldn't be brittle when they finished, or not be hard, not be hard enough. You had to keep, this was all a science involved in this. In the meantime, you're keeping track of the puggers, making sure that they're getting that done. The folks that are rotating the bricks, they're doing that. And then managing the logistics of moving the bricks off where they need to be stacked. And when it comes time to build the house, to bring your bricks that you made the last few years, 60, 100,000, whatever, when you get ready to build the house, you're going up. It takes years to build these houses, okay? So it's very labor intensive. There's a lot of science involved, and this is the contribution of the enslaved.